The Reverso is a device for belaying the leader or second. It is for use with two dynamic half ropes or a single dynamic rope certified to EN 892. The Reverso is also a descender for rappelling. Here are the various parts of the Reverso: the retainer, attachment point, slots, climber side of the rope, braking side of the rope. Chapter 1. Belaying the leader.
Installing the Reverso.
Using a locking carabiner, the anchored belayer clips the retainer of the Reverso to the belay loop of the harness. He then forms a bight in the rope and inserts the bight into one of the slots on the Reverso, taking care to identify the braking side and the climber side of the rope. The locking carabiner is clipped through the bight of rope and the retainer and then locked. The belayer verifies that the rope is correctly installed in the Reverso with respect to the braking side and the climber side of the rope.
The climber's advances.
The belayer feeds slack as the climber advances, taking care to always keep a grip on the braking side of the rope. The belayer takes care to minimize slack in the system and maintains a braking stance to hold the climber on the rope if necessary. The belayer resumes feeding slack as the climber continues the ascent.
Clipping.
I'd like to have the courage to serve their country and the wider world. The wider world.
The belayer feeds slack quickly as the climber is clipping protection, keeping a grip on the braking side of the rope. The belayer adjusts the slack as the climber moves past the protection.
Locking off.
The belayer sees that the climber intends to rest, so he takes up all the slack and locks off the rope to hold the climber in place.
Sheila's got no answer, and Gary's got no clue.
Stopping full.
I keep the monkeys blinded. It's time to feed the deaf and dumb.
To arrest the fall, the belayer pulls firmly downward on the braking side of the rope.
Lowering through a top anchor.
The belayer grips the braking hand of the rope with both hands. The top hand is taken off of the rope and placed below the other hand, allowing the rope to slip through the Reverso. One hand is kept on the braking side of the rope at all times. The hand-over-hand movement is repeated slowly and steadily until the climber reaches the ground. Chapter 2. Belaying the second.
Installing the Reverso in self-braking mode.
Using a locking carabiner, the anchored belayer clips the Reverso's attachment point to the anchor and locks the carabiner. He then takes up any slack in the line. The belayer inserts the ropes into the Reverso, taking care before insertion to identify the braking side and the climber side of the rope. He then clips the loops of rope and the retainer with the locking carabiner and locks the carabiner. The carabiner is oriented so that the loops of rope pass around the spine of the carabiner. The belayer verifies visually that the rope is installed correctly in the Reverso with respect to the braking side and the climber side of the rope.
Verifying self-braking function of the Reverso.
The belayer verifies that the self-braking function is working by pulling down on the climber side of the ropes. The climber side of the ropes must not slip through the reverso when pulled.
Belaying in self-braking mode.
Using both hands, the belayer pulls slack through the reverso as the climber ascends, taking care to always keep a grip on the braking side of the rope.
Installing the reverso in non-self-braking mode.
The anchored belayer establishes a redirect for the rope by clipping a locking carabiner into a sound anchor. The belayer clips the climber's rope through the locking carabiner and locks the carabiner, and then he takes up any slack in the lines. Using a locking carabiner, the belayer clips the retainer of the reverso into the belay loop of the harness. The belayer inserts the ropes into the reverso, taking care before insertion to identify the braking side and the climber side of the rope. He then clips the loops of the rope and the retainer with a locking carabiner and locks the carabiner. The belayer verifies that the rope is correctly installed in the reverso with respect to the braking side and the climber side of the rope.
Belaying in non-self-braking mode.
The belayer takes up slack as the climber advances, taking care to always keep a grip on the braking side of the rope. Attention! This solution is not self-braking. Chapter 3. Repelling.
Installing a repel backup. Solution 1. Reverso plus shunt.
The anchored repeller attaches the shunt to the rope. Then, using a locking carabiner, he attaches the shunt to the belay loop of his harness and locks the carabiner. The repeller clips the reverso to the extension sling with a locking carabiner. The repeller inserts the rope into the reverso, taking care before insertion to identify the braking side and the anchor side of the rope. He then clips the loops of rope and the retainer with a locking carabiner and locks the carabiner.
Installing a repel backup. Solution 2. Reverso plus friction hitch.
The anchored repeller attaches a locking carabiner to the belay loop of his harness, and then attaches a loop of suitable cord to the carabiner. The repeller forms a friction hitch around the rope and clips the end into the locking carabiner, then locks the carabiner. The repeller clips the reverso to the extension sling with a locking carabiner. The repeller inserts the ropes into the reverso, taking care before insertion to identify the braking side and the anchor side of the rope. He then clips the loops of rope and the retainer with a locking carabiner and locks the carabiner.
Repelling. Solution 2. Reverso plus friction hitch.
Having correctly installed the reverso and friction hitch on the rope, the repeller detaches himself from the anchor and begins the repel. The brake hand is on the rope below the friction hitch, which is gripped by the other hand. The brake hand controls the descent by varying the grip on the braking side of the rope. This video has presented the principal ways to use the reverso. The reversino functions in the same way. The only difference between these two devices is the diameter of the ropes that can be used. The reverso is used with single or double dynamic ropes between 8 and 11 millimeters in diameter. The performance and braking will vary depending on the condition and the diameter of the rope used. The reversino is used with small diameter half or twin ropes between 7.5 and 8.2 millimeters in diameter. The performance and braking will vary depending on the condition and diameter of the rope used. The reversino is always used with 2 strands of rope.
and I'll be
Paying my dues to the courtyard. Paying my dues to the thief.
and I'll be
I'm paying my dues to the wide world overseas.
Sheila's got no answer and Gary's got no clue. I keep the monkeys blinded